Welcome to Corazón del Crimen, where crime and passion collide. I'm Troy Bellow the Prophet, and I'm thrilled to introduce our latest addition to the series, Toxic White Sugar. In this gripping tale, we follow the story of Pete, Nicole, and a cast of characters as they navigate a dangerous underworld of drugs, deceit, and murder. But Corazón del Crimen isn't just a book series. It's a friend that's dedicated to bringing you thrilling stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. We're committed to giving you unforgettable experiences that will make you want more. So if you're ready to take a dive into a world of crime, love, and betrayal, then make sure to tune in to Toxic White Sugar and the rest of our Corazón del Crimen series. Buckle up because it's going to be a wild ride. Chapter title: Plus Tax Paparazzi. The camera pans to the two stunning hosts of Plus Tax Paparazzi, Jana and Dana, as they welcome their viewers to today's show. Good afternoon, New York City. Welcome to Plus Tax Paparazzi, the show that gives you all the latest Hollywood gossip plus tax, says Jana. Today we're talking about the hottest topic on the streets, toxic white sugar, says Dana. But before we get into that, let's talk about some other juicy news. Jana jumps in. First up, we have Carlito Nain. Word on the street is that he's becoming a big problem in New York City. Some sources say that he's involved in the toxic white sugar trade. Speaking of toxic, our beloved Chief of Police, Pete Machete, has just won another award for outstanding service. Congratulations, Pete, Dana exclaims. Moving on to matters of the heart, rumors are swirling that Sonia Escobar has been spotted on dates with none other than Tom Cruise, Jana reveals. The camera cuts to Ashley, the field reporter, who is out on the streets trying to figure out the mystery behind toxic white sugar. Ashley here, and I'm on the streets of New York City trying to find out what exactly is toxic white sugar. I've talked to a few people and the responses have been interesting, Ashley reports. One person Ashley interviews says that it's a new drug on the streets, while another says it's just toxic relationships. But the interesting thing is that everyone seems to love it, and even some of the hottest rappers are using it in their lyrics, Ashley adds. Jana and Dana then bring the focus back to the toxic white sugar craze. We still don't know exactly what it is, but it's clear that it's taking over the city. We'll keep you updated on any new developments, says Jana. And that's all we have for today's episode of Plus Tax Paparazzi. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow for more Hollywood gossip plus tax. I'm Jana, and I'm Dana, signing off, the two hosts say in unison as the camera fades to black. Chapter 1 of Toxic White Sugar. Nicole sat in her bakery shop, staring at the handcuffs that Chief of Police Pete Machete had placed on her. He was bluffing when he called for backup, and now he was going through the back of the shop. Nicole had exchanged numbers with him and felt a strange connection to the crooked cop. She wondered what he was doing back there. Suddenly, she heard a commotion in the back room. She strained to listen but couldn't hear anything. Nicole struggled against the handcuffs and managed to free one of her hands. She worked on the other and soon she was free. She quietly tiptoed to the door and broke the fuck out. Pete was looking around the back room, investigating. When he found the dead bodies, slumped over a bag of 5-pound sugar, he smiled. Impressive work, he thought, as small as she was. Shit, she was able to clobber these two clowns. And by the looks of it, they never stood a chance. Pete was surprised when he turned around and saw that Nicole was gone. He couldn't help but chuckle to himself. This was definitely the girl of his dreams, a real killer queen. Pete wondered if he would ever see her again. As Pete called members of the Legion to come and clean up the mess in the back room, he couldn't help but think about Nicole. He knew he shouldn't be getting involved with a criminal, but he couldn't help himself. He had to see her again. Meanwhile, the city of New York was buzzing with the news of toxic white sugar. Reports had been released detailing the harmful effects of the sugar on the body and its contribution to the obesity epidemic. People were starting to pay attention to what they were putting into their bodies and making changes. As the city grappled with this new information, the question remained, who was responsible for those dead bodies at the bakery, and what will Officer Machete do about it? Guess we'll find out when Nicole and Pete's paths cross again, in a dangerous game of cat and mouse that will uncover the dark secrets behind the blood sugar incident at Miss Nicole's bakery. Chapter 2. A Chance Encounter with Juliet. Miss Nicole was in a state of panic as she fled from Officer Pete Machete at her bakery shop. She managed to escape from the handcuffs and ran down the street, desperately trying to save herself. But suddenly her schizophrenia kicked in and she went from being frantic to walking aimlessly, forgetting why she was running in the first place. Lost and confused, Miss Nicole began skipping and frolicking through the street like nothing was wrong. Her mental health issues were taking over, and she had no idea where she was. It was then that Juliet and Steve were driving down the road and spotted the disoriented woman. Juliet, being the kind and caring person that she was, told Steve to pull over and help Miss Nicole, but Steve hesitated, making a gesture that suggested the bitch looked dangerous. Juliet, however, insisted, and they eventually stopped to pick her up. As soon as Miss Nicole got into the car, she felt a sense of familiarity with Juliet. Her schizophrenia made her think that Juliet was one of her old schoolmates from back in the day. She embraced Juliet and told her that she had been looking for her. Juliet and Steve decided to take Miss Nicole to the hospital, but as they drove, Miss Nicole spotted a bag of pills on the middle console. They were MDMA pills that Steve had bought to sell and make money while they were on the run. Miss Nicole immediately thought that they were her medication pills and gobbled down the entire bag, which contained 10 pills. As they stopped at a red light, Steve and Juliet turned around to see Miss Nicole with her mouth full of pills, and their jaws dropped in shock. "What the fuck just happened?" Steve exclaimed to Juliet. It was clear that Miss Nicole's mental health issues were causing her to act erratically, and her encounter with Juliet and Steve was just the beginning of a tumultuous journey for all of them. As they continued on their way, Steve and Juliet realized that their decision to pick up a stranger in need might have been a mistake. Little did they know, their lives were about to become even more intertwined with Miss Nicole's as they navigated the dangerous world of toxic white sugar. We leave our listeners in suspense, and our cameras shoot over to the other side of town where we see the chief of police, Pete Machete, in an all-out gun battle. There are 5 officers, including himself, and they've been in a firefight for about 10 minutes. Across the street, it looks like an old Western shootout, with everyone hunched behind cars and shots being let off. It seems like they've been here for the last 20 minutes, shooting as many shells as they can see in the street. All the smoke from the guns creates a thick haze, and then right when you're looking at the scene, you see the cavalry coming in. This is the problem. This is why nobody in the city could defeat Chief Machete. Even if your goons had enough guns to hold him back from doing what he wanted to do, he'd just call in reinforcements. And trust me, the New York Police Department is paying overtime for reinforcements, so when he calls, they come. And if you kill those guys, they'll send more. And if you get lucky and kill those guys, they'll send the government. There's no beating Chief Machete. We return to one of those big garbage truck-looking police mobiles, which comes crashing on the same side as all the gangsters. Like I said, there's a group of gangsters, more than several guys, shooting and taking cover behind their cars. And what does Chief Machete's Legion do? They drive a police bulletproof dump truck directly into the group of cars, smashing it against the men's bodies and mangling them against the store wall. Everyone's dead except the 2 guys from the Legion who are driving that monster truck. It actually can still back up, and all you see is destruction. Even though these men might have been the worst of the worst, the guys that killed them weren't good. The camera zooms back to the back seat of Steve's car, where, surprisingly, Miss Nicole is completely sober. I mean, the 10 MDMA pills have actually done the opposite on her. Maybe it's because she's so crazy, or maybe it's because she's struggling with so many mental illnesses no one could ever diagnose. Miss Nicole is a completely different person from what we've seen so far. For 4 books, she's been a crazy murder mommy, to say the least. But now, she seems super intelligent, super rational, calm, loving, and able to go through all the emotions. She shows a little fierceness, and even is shrewd enough to tell a lie because she knows she's a murderer and a hitwoman. Yes, Miss Nicole was a hitwoman before she lost some memory, before her schizophrenia kicked in to where she couldn't control it. She was a high-paid hitman, or hitwoman, I should say. She remembers everything and now directs Steve and Juliet to her mansion to meet her niece and her nephews. I can't wait for it. The way she's acting, I don't know if her niece and nephews ever met her before. This is going to be great. Before they had arrived. Miss Nicole has a heart-to-heart conversation with the people in the car, letting them know that she had been framed by the crooked Chief Machete. She knows that she's lying, but who cares? Pete Machete is the dirtiest cop in New York City, He's dirtier than the old dirty bastard, man. He's super dirty. This guy is diaper dirty. They said he shoot more shots than Larry Birdie, and those are actually lyrics that Officer Pete wrote while he was in his police car doing nothing today, I swear. Chapter 3. The Show Must Go On. Shokan drove down the streets of Newark, New Jersey in his fully restored 1989 Pontiac, the sleek black car turning heads as he blasted LL Cool J's I'm Bad on the radio. His car was a masterpiece, fully equipped with all the latest gadgets and state-of-the-art features that seemed impossible for a car from the 80s to have. As he cruised down the streets, Shokan received a call on his cell phone. He picked up and heard a familiar voice on the other end. "Hey, man, you seen that toxic girl yet?" the voice asked. Shokan chuckled to himself, knowing exactly what the man meant. "Yeah, she's with me right now," he replied. The man on the other end sounded relieved. Good, good. I'll be at the spot in an hour. Bring that girl through times 22. Shokan knew what the man really wanted. He was after the toxic white sugar that Shokan had been importing into the area. Shokan had a reputation as the main importer of the drug in Newark, and he knew that everyone wanted a piece of it. He arrived at the designated spot 15 minutes early, just as he always did. He had 2 other cars with him, just in case anything went wrong. He knew that if anyone tried to rob him, they'd be dead before they even knew what hit them. As he waited for the man to arrive, Shokan thought about the toxic white sugar. He knew that it was the future of drugs. This was the new wave, and he was the only one surfing. Everyone else was still, trying to catch the wave. But he also knew that it was in high demand, and that he was making a fortune off of it. Finally, the man arrived. Buddy was nervous but excited. He'd never seen the drug before, but he knew that it was worth a lot of money. Shokan handed over the package, 22 ounces of the toxic white sugar, and the man eagerly handed over the cash. As Shokan drove away from the deal, he couldn't help but feel like he shouldn't have served Buddy, but maybe he was just being paranoid. But he also knew that he was making a lot of money, and that he had a family to uphold. He turned up the music and drove off into the night, feeling worried but powerful. He was the king of the drug game in Newark, and he didn't plan on giving up his throne anytime soon. Chapter 4. Crooked Cop K. As the smoke clears and the flames from the burning cars in the background illuminate the scene, one of the 2 men emerges from the garbage truck police vehicle. He appears unfazed by the chaos around him, a true professional. This is the infamous Crooked K, a certified psycho killer and former member of the notorious Legion gang. He had made a name for himself as a ruthless shooter in the streets of Vegas before joining forces with Chief Machete. Crooked K had a reputation for going above and beyond when it came to taking out his targets. He was not picky about who he killed, as long as he was getting paid. Before becoming a cop, he was shaking down the casinos in Vegas and demanding protection money. He believed that everyone should pay for protection, whether they were criminals or not. Although he was now wearing a badge, Crooked K's killer instinct had not diminished. He was a legend in the streets, known for his deadly precision and complete disregard for human life. He did not deserve to have a badge, yet he was using his position of power to carry out his violent missions with impunity. Crooked K was just one piece of the puzzle in the corrupt city of New York. The chief of police, a deadly viper, was the mastermind behind the exponential growth of violence in the city. He was causing chaos and destruction, and Crooked K was just taking advantage of the situation that was given to him. He was not snitching on anyone, but he was killing everything in sight for the right people. In the end, Crooked K was paid highly to carry out his murderous missions. He was a trained killer, and nothing was going to stop him from completing his tasks. The story of Crooked K is a testament to the dark and twisted reality of New York, where corruption and violence were the norm. The gunfight had left the street littered with wreckage and dead bodies. Officer Pete and his crew of crooked cops, who called themselves the Legion, had taken cover behind a row of cars across the street. They had just sparked up a joint when Crooked K and another member of the team approached them. As they huddled together to make their plans, one of the Legion members who was checking the bodies across the street found a survivor. The wounded man was in bad shape, but he was still alive. The Legion member grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him out of hiding. When the team saw that the man was alive, they rushed across the street like a pack of hungry wolves. They pointed their guns at him and started kicking and beating him immediately. Officer Pete had to step in to stop the beating and ordered the men to chill. He turned to the man and said, "There are two ways this can go. You either tell us what this toxic white sugar is, or you tell us where it is. I'm not here to play with you, and this won't be funny if you waste my time." The man spat at Pete and said, "Kill me, you piece of shit. You'll never find the white." Pete shot the man in his foot, not to kill him, but to make him talk. The man screamed in pain, but Pete ignored him. He called over the medics who were waiting across the street for his permission to check on the survivors. As the medics rushed to help the wounded man, Pete leaned in close and said, "Listen, bitch, I'm going to make sure you live, and I'm going to punish you every single day until you tell me where the white is. You're going to be on the brink of death, and I'm going to make these people bring you back to life, and then I'm going to kill you again. I don't care how long it takes, but you're going to tell me where that toxic white sugar is." The man screamed in agony as the medics tended to his wounds. Pete stood back and watched, his eyes filled with determination. He was going to get what he wanted, no matter what it took. To continue with the story, the man who was dragged out from the wreckage is in excruciating pain as he's brought to the ambulance. Officer Pete is enraged by his lack of cooperation and orders his team to bring him to a secluded location. The man pleads for mercy, but Pete is determined to get what he wants. As they arrive at the location, Pete orders his men to restrain the man and begins to interrogate him. He inflicts pain on him, grabbing his wounded knee and making him scream in agony. The man still refuses to talk, but Pete is not giving up. Pete tells the man that he will continue to torture him until he reveals the location of the toxic white sugar. The man still resists, and Pete decides to up the ante. He orders his men to bring in a car battery and jumper cables. The man begs for mercy, but Pete is unrelenting. He attaches the cables to the man's body and delivers a shock that makes him convulse in agony. The man finally breaks, and through tears and screams, he reveals the location of the toxic white sugar. Pete grins triumphantly as he thanks the man for his cooperation. He then orders his men to dispose of him, telling them to make it look like an accident. As the man's lifeless body is thrown into the back of a car, Pete reflects on the power and control he feels. He knows that the money from the toxic white sugar will make him and his team rich beyond their wildest dreams. But he also knows that this is just the beginning, and that he will stop at nothing to get what he wants. Chapter 5. Breaking News and Laws. Jana and Dana were ready to break some news on their show, and they had a real scoop this time. They announced to the audience that their brave and daring reporter, Ashley, was out on the streets investigating the new drug that had been causing a stir in the city. Toxic white sugar. As the cameras switched to Ashley's live report, the viewers were greeted with an image of a man with tattoos covering his arms, his face obscured by a mask. It was the same guy who had just bought 22 ounces of the drug from Shokan. He seemed more interested in getting some attention than staying under the radar, and he eagerly chatted with Ashley as she probed him about the drug's effects. "It's like cocaine, but stronger," he boasted. "It goes down smooth and you don't even notice until it's over. And it's a natural aphrodisiac, too. That's why people are going crazy for it. It brings out the animal in everyone, especially when it comes to sex." Ashley's eyes widened as the guy handed her a small bag of the crystalline substance. She examined it closely, her nose twitching at the acrid smell emanating from it. She tried to maintain her composure as the guy kept talking, but her professionalism was tested when he leaned in and whispered something in her ear that made her blush. Jana and Dana watched in horror as their friend flirted with danger on live TV. They tried to cut to a commercial break, but before they could do so, the scene switched abruptly to another one. The feed showed a group of police officers, led by Officer Pete, storming into a building and shouting orders. Flash grenades exploded, temporarily blinding the cameras and the viewers at home. When the image returned, Jana and Dana were visibly shaken. They tried to compose themselves, but they couldn't hide their concern for Ashley. "What just happened?" Jana asked, looking bewildered. "We don't know," Dana replied, her voice quivering. "But we have to find out. We have to make sure Ashley is safe." The episode ended with a sense of foreboding, leaving the viewers wondering what would happen next. The future of the news station and of Ashley hung in the balance. Chapter 6. The Escape Artist. The police raid had caught Ashley and her team off guard. The flash bombs had exploded, the door had been kicked in, and chaos had erupted in the studio. Ashley had been interviewing a low-level drug dealer for her show, Toxic White Sugar, when the police had stormed in. She had managed to slip away unnoticed, thanks to her quick reflexes and agility. Ashley had always been in top physical shape. She had been a competitive gymnast in high school and had continued to stay active by running marathons and practicing martial arts. She knew the streets of New York like the back of her hand and had developed a keen sense of awareness over the years. As the police descended on the studio, Ashley had immediately assessed the situation. She saw that the only way out was through a small window in the back of the studio. With a quick glance around the room, she sprang into action. Ashley leaped over the desk where the drug dealer was sitting, using it as a launching pad to vault over a row of chairs. She then flipped over a table, knocking over a lamp and scattering papers in her wake. The drug dealer and her cameraman were both too slow to keep up with Ashley's lightning-fast movements. As Ashley reached the window, she kicked out the glass and leaped through it, landed in a crouch, and took off running down the alleyway. The police were hot on her heels, but Ashley was a pro at evading capture. She broke out through the crowded streets, leaping over obstacles and dodging around pedestrians. She even managed to somersault over a parked car, much to the surprise of the onlookers. Ashley's heart was pounding in her chest as she ran. She knew that one false move could mean capture, and she was determined to make it out alive. She finally spotted a parked car a couple of blocks away and ran towards it. As she got closer, she could see that it was an Uber. She quickly hopped into the back seat and gave the driver an address. The driver looked startled, but Ashley flashed him a wad of cash and ordered him to start driving. Ashley breathed a sigh of relief as she sat back in the seat. She had made it out alive, but she knew that there was still a chance that the cameraman might talk. If he did, it could mean the end of the show and the company. But for now, Ashley was just glad to be alive and on the move. She closed her eyes and tried to calm her racing heart as the Uber drove her away from the chaos of the raid. Chapter 7. A New Home. As they arrived at the mansion, Juliet, Steve, and Nicole were greeted by the warm glow of the beautiful property. The kids were already there, having made the place look even more stunning. It had been a while since any of them had had a peaceful evening like this, and they were all relieved to be in a safe haven. Nicole insisted they make themselves at home and take a tour of the mansion. As they walked through the various rooms, Juliet and Steve couldn't help but be impressed by the elegant decor and exquisite taste. Meanwhile, Nicole went to the kitchen to prepare a special meal for everyone. She had always loved cooking, and it was clear that she put her heart and soul into every dish. As they sat down to eat, the conversation turned to their mutual enemy, the corrupt chief of police, Pete Machete. Both women had experienced his wrath firsthand and were determined to bring him down. They discussed their plans for revenge, but also acknowledged the danger involved. Despite the seriousness of their situation, the evening was filled with laughter and joy. They talked about their pasts and their dreams for the future, and for a brief moment, they forgot about the chaos that surrounded them. As the night drew to a close, they all retired to their respective rooms, feeling grateful for the shelter and security that the mansion provided. They knew that they still had a long way to go before they could truly be safe, but for now, they were content to rest and regroup. The morning sun was shining through the windows of Miss Nicole's lavish mansion as Steve woke up before the two ladies, Juliet and Miss Nicole. He couldn't resist exploring the house, marveling at the state of the yard and the opulence of the mansion. He took advantage of Miss Nicole's personal chef and ate an exquisite French-inspired breakfast. Feeling energized, he decided to check out the state-of-the-art gym inside the mansion, spending half an hour in the sauna and then taking a refreshing dip in the pool outside. His adventure eventually led him to a laboratory, where he found himself staring at a white sugar substance that had caught his attention. As Juliet and Miss Nicole woke up and finished breakfast, Juliet received a tour of the mansion from Miss Nicole herself. As they walked through the mansion, they stumbled upon Steve in the laboratory, still staring at the white substance. It was everywhere in the room, and the women were confused and startled by the amount of white powder in the room. Miss Nicole explained that it was toxic white sugar, a substance she had created back in 2000 to be used as an alternative to hardcore street drugs. It was supposed to be something synthetic that wouldn't do damage to the human mind or body, but she failed miserably and created something even stronger than heroin, fentanyl, or cocaine, which would inevitably do the same as any other hardcore street drug. Miss Nicole decided not to distribute the product and forgot all about it in her laboratory. As she suffered from memory loss and battled with schizophrenia, she forgot altogether that the white substance was toxic white girl. She actually remembered now, in her delusions thinking that it was sugar. And for the last 6 months, all of her baked goods out of her bakery had been infused with the toxic white sugar. It all made sense to all 3 of our characters at the moment. Now they realized why her baked goods were so sought out, why there were lines around all her bakeries, and why the world was in a craze over Miss Nicole's baked goodies. Miss Nicole went on to explain the molecular breakdown of sugar, cocaine, fentanyl, and heroin, and then showed the difference within the toxic white sugar. Steve's shock turned into a face of rejoice, and he started to celebrate as if he had just scored the winning touchdown at the Super Bowl. He ran around the gigantic laboratory, grabbing bags of the toxic white sugar as if they were bags of money, dancing, skipping, jumping, and screaming, "We're going to be rich, 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 rich!" Juliet explained that she was not a drug dealer, but she was in this bad situation running from the police that framed her and caused the terrible incident that night that she could never forget. She needed to make some money, and they agreed that going into business was not a bad idea since they had the creator of the substance in their midst. Steve was still celebrating, on his knees, saying a prayer to God, thanking him for his newfound fortune and opportunity. Amen. Before we go, we want to give a special shout-out to our listeners for tuning in to this chapter of Corazón del Crimen. We appreciate your support and hope you enjoyed the story so far. We also want to thank our amazing cast of characters, including Steve, Juliet, Miss Nicole, Jana and Dana, Ashley, Pete Machete, Crooked K, Shokan, Carlito Nene, and Sonia Escobar for bringing this story to life. Be sure to tune in to our next installment for more drama, suspense, and twists that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Once again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next chapter of Corazón del Crimen, written by Troy Bellow the Prophet.